my name is Barbara Beckley. Welcome to the Diamond Spotlight interview. I am the founder of the Diamond Factor LLC, where the mission is to empower women to understand their PPD, their purpose, their passion, and their drive. And this platform is to make sure to increase their visibility and shine like a diamond to the world. Today we have another, and I call the ladies Queen Diamonds. So we have another royalty Queen Diamond here today. Gillian Atkinson, how are you doing this morning?
Well, listeners don't know, but we've had a bit of a pantomime, haven't we, you and I, to get on. But I'm here, and I'm delighted to be on your programme. Thank you very much indeed, Barbara. It's an honour.
Well, first of all, I'm always, when it comes to being on the show, I'm always really authentic. So you're right. I'm going to tell all the listeners that this woman, I'm going to start off. She is so awesome, so amazing, so wonderful, because I know that I needed to talk to her. I needed to interview her because we had so many technical problems before.
Yeah, we did.
But you know what? It all came together. And I said, I don't care what's going on. We are going to do this, and we are here. So thank you, Queen, for being so patient. So in your bio, and you may, like I said, you have to correct because there were some things that I didn't read correctly, but I want to make sure that we talk it out. Because I was just reading some of your background. I was like, wow. I said, you are a warrior. So, and, in the Bible mentioned, love of music and everything, but I want to know what inspired you. I know there was some things that happened in your life at an early age. So can you talk a little bit about that to us?
Yes, I can. I was given up for adoption, and I'd like to say, they had this wonderful family, and it was all wrong because it was the 50s, and the morality was, if a woman got pregnant, it was all her fault, and they mustn't, she had to give the child up. I'd like to say they're a very nice family, but they weren't, because they were riddled with, when I've done the family history of abuse. Well, Barbara, we live in an abuse culture, don't we? It's an absolute fact. It's a cancer. And then I got adopted. I don't know why I'm laughing. It's not funny, but he was a violent, sadistic paedophile, actually, and she wasn't much better. But there are elements of the childhood that were normal. It's a wonder I'm not bonkers. But anyway, I was taught to read. I was very interested in reading, and I had an interest in music. I loved records, and they seemed to sort of speak to me. And as at the time, there was a lot of I like all sorts of music. I like classical music. I like all sorts, but I was particularly drawn to when we got to hear it anyway. Early soul music, and at my age, Tamla Motown. And I'm going to just thank the Beatles a bit, because they also started to bring over black acts and things like that. The Rolling Stones were quite instrumental in introducing and encouraging people to listen to what I hate to differentiate it, but it's black music, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, but I like what you said though, Gillian, about with the Rolling Stones and the Beatles, because they all, and even Elvis Presley. I mean, they brought together that, and it was part of that era that the music started. Yeah,
and introduced it all to Europe. Anyway, eventually I did leave sort of home. It's too complicated, all that, because I ended up still having a relationship with these people. I blocked a lot out of what had happened to me. That's the whole thing in itself, isn't it, really? But my life improved from that, other than having a lot of, I don't want to say mental health difficulties, because I don't know if you've noticed or observed this, Barbara, but people who've been victims are often like, they're mentally ill or their mental health. Well, I don't feel like that. It's the bloody purpose. Oh, I'm swearing now. But it is those people who do these terrible acts who are mentally ill, in my opinion, rather than people who, you're going to be, aren't you, very anxious, nervous, having very strange thoughts and feelings if these terrible things have happened to you. Anyway, we've only got a fairly short interview, but I've been very lucky then, because I met some great people in my life. I know it's an abuse culture, but there's a lot of very good people, standing up for the sort of things I believe in. If you want the truth, Barbara, I think it's the bloody mass in the middle who won't do anything, who just go along with all the wrong in the world. But that's just my, opinion. Although I tend to think it's a fact.
Well, it is. Yeah, I was about to say it's a fact too. It is a fact. So you're right. But I'm loving. So now, like you said, with what you went through with dealing with that, which again, I have to commend you, because, dealing with all that. And then now that you established your company, your Document Records UK. So what, made you get to that point? Because I know you said you had a love of music. So how did it go?
Well, we like the blues, both my husband, Gary, and I. We're joint partners. And very quickly, the very early blues start. I don't want to sort of comment when it really started, because no one actually knows. And there's a silly debate that I think white people like to have it. Oh, what's the first blues record? I don't know. I don't think anyone knows, does it? But nevertheless, all these records, as you probably know, it all started actually 100 years ago on record. It was the wonderful Mamie Smith, guided by a guy called Perry Bradford, who does not get any sort of credit for what he did. He persuaded a white record industry, although that what they should do was put out a lady who was very famous. Like, people went to see her all the time, black and white, and she was singing sort of all sorts of things, popular records and blues. And Perry Bradford said to the record label, said, I think this would sell in droves. I think it would sell in droves to African Americans. Like, and black people were the same as well. What are you thinking? Because it was so entrenched, I think, the divide. That's my understanding of it as a European. Anyway, nonetheless, it persisted, did Perry. I adore him. I love him. It just went along until someone listened to what he had to say and said, okay, well, we'll just take a chance on it. And that first record was Crazy Blues, and it sold like I don't know what. It's so... There's a great story about him. There's a wonderful story about him sitting on the pavement in Harlem. And a guy called U.B. Blake came up to him and he said, are you all right? He said, I don't know what to do with this. And it was a royalty check for nearly $750,000, Yeah.
Can't pay That's okay for
no, it was quite a good problem to have, wasn't it? Anyway, from that, there was an explosion of recordings, African American women, and they call that, as I'm sure you know, the vaudeville or the classic blues.
Yeah.
And then after that, it sort of went to men. And then lots of factors happening in the late 20s, the terrible recession and things. And that set, in my opinion, only my opinion, African Americans back in quite a way. That's my understanding of it. And you got this another upsurge in bloody racism. And
no, it's sad.
It's endless. Anyway, ultimately, this whole canon, shall we say, of African American recordings up to the 60s, and we know, of course, they've gone on from there. But typically, and I don't want to knock the American recording companies too much, when things stopped selling, they took them out of their catalogue. You can understand that, of course. But Europeans began to say, look, we're very interested in this music. Could you reissue it? Well, a lot of it, through the passage of time, for a lot of reasons, they didn't own it anymore, or it was all lost. It was out of favour by black and white people. It's just a phase that people go through, So they were a bit mad, I think, these Europeans decided they would try and get everything that's ever been put out and reissue it. And ultimately, that's what happened. In a sort of a very academic-y way. And when Gary and I took it on, it's all the complete works in chronological order. And a lot wasn't known, obviously, as you can imagine, about many of the artists, some of the bigger artists. Of course, there was no internet back then. So if you wanted to know anything, you had to write to America. You probably had to write to, I'm going to say a white person, was true, because nobody knew.
Yeah.
Black Africa didn't, for all sorts of reasons.
Yeah.
However, now that we've been curating it for 20 years, and I've had the very good fortune now to meet or to be in contact with relatives of some of these obscure people, and less than obscure. I think you've had Elva Green on, and her father was the wonderful Eddie Green. So I think our mission is, well, I don't want to call it a mission, but from my point of view, and this is a bit difficult, I need, I could do with some guidance on this, because I don't want to come over as, oh, we white Europeans, we know what's best, because we bloody well don't. That's been my experience in my own life. But this wonderful archive of African American music created by African Americans, I'd like that to be better known, if you know what I mean. That
well, I think, well, Julie, I seen your website, because I was pulling that up and just looking around, and I was like, oh my God, you have done so wonderful bringing in the history and pulling all that information so we can know and go back in time with you what you did to bring out the beauty and the different type of music and the blues and everything that was could have been missed if you didn't do all that research and put it out there online. So thank you so much for that. Yes.
Well, with that, I'm proud of that, and I'm proud of what they did. But I think too, it's also from quite a white perspective as well, which you can understand, of course, for the reasons that I gave. But when you don't know things, you can make the incorrect sort of assumptions. I was reading the other day about a chap called Charles Matson. He wasn't particularly famous, but he was around in the Harlem Renaissance. And somebody had written a biography of him, but they said, oh, his wife was probably a dancer. Very dismissive. Not that there's anything wrong with dancers. I don't mean that. But his wife, in fact, as it turns out, was one of the very first women to go into the Hall Johnson choir. And Hall Johnson at the time was an amazing Black intellect and choir master who wanted to look at spirituals, etc., and put them out in a way that he thought was right. And she was somebody who was in his first choir. So I feel that this is what, because this guy didn't know, it's just easy to make assumptions. Oh, she'll have been a dancer, but she wasn't,
Yeah. Because really, I always tell people, you really have to understand. That's why I love about having this platform to learn, like wonderful women like you. You need to know the story behind the person. Just don't throw it out there, because that was so, oh, she's a dancer, but there was so much more, to that. And you have to really dig a little bit deeper. I always tell people, because, you have that jewel. That's why I call you all diamonds, because you're all diamonds in the rough. You're all diamonds in the rough to me. So, and then you get the story and you're like, wow, Gillian sat here and basically put everything, all the history, and gave it to us so we can appreciate, the music that you appreciate.
I think so. And I don't think there was a way particularly also for families of these musicians to reach out to. That has changed considerably. And again, I don't want this to sound, it's very difficult, isn't it, really, to say stuff without it sounding either a bit patronizing or if I've said anything like that, I deeply, deeply apologize. Don't intend to.
I mean, like I tell people back, we're going back in time, and that's how things were. And what the sad part about it is we're still dealing with, that discrimination, racism in certain areas of life. I mean, that's been going on for a long time. So everybody understands that. But, through that, even through all I call it that kind of the icky stuff, if you want to say it like that. This comes like you came, and there's other people, Black and white, different, that says, you know what, this is important. I see this is important, and we need to bring this out.
I think so. And I think we need to be moving forward as an alliance of people. I don't want to say woke and all that sort of stuff, but I think if we want to survive almost as a species, really, I think we've got to be better educated, that we have to work together culturally, bringing in all races and nations. I do feel like that. I know what you said, but as far as I can see, racism is just, I mean, I don't know if I should even say it, but I don't care. I'm going to, I'm 66, can say it's alive, well, and it's frequently kicking. And it disgusts me, frankly, but obviously we've got to speak out and do all this. But as I say, I know a lot of people where we're working together to further the cause of justice for all peoples. And when I said Aboriginal rights, I think this also applies to Native peoples as well.
Yes.
It's this, when you think of it, Barbara, it's a bloody big struggle, isn't it? Because it's women, it's African Americans, it's Native, and these white. I mean, this thing at the top. It is really. If it has been so marvelous, white patriarchy, etc., why are we at the point of disastrous climate change and about to destroy ourselves? If it's all so marvelous as they make out. I mean, we haven't done too bad out of it, Gary and I. I don't want to knock every aspect of that. But so many people have suffered at this. It's not sustainable, Barbara. It's just not sustainable.
I know. But see, I always say, through all that, I always say the storms and everything around us, that's what I call racism and everything else that we have to deal with and some things. But our control that we have, Gillian, like how you've done, if you have the voices that you have, voice that I have, and then we come together and we keep pushing that, I feel like that's progress for me. That it's a step-by-step progress, but it's progress.
Yes, yes, it is. I mean, I do accept that there has been progress. I think it's too slow. And we as people and as a company have tried to step away from things that are causing barriers to people's life. I'm not saying we've got it all right, by the way, and I'm quite sure there'll be a lot of people who say, oh, well, you say all this, but you've done blah, 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 and I'm sure I have. I'm not setting myself out to be perfect, although I quite like to give that impression, but I'm not. I
say that as well. And I think you're awesome and amazing. But I wanted to ask before we, close, because I mean, first of all, I'm loving our conversation because this is something that we need to really see. This is something I always tell people, and just because, I mean, this is about you, but just real quickly, we need to talk about these type of struggles more and more and the challenges, and just get it out there and tell people that, look, we're human beings. It's not black, white, Mexican, all different races, but no, we are the human race. I keep telling people that. That's more important than looking at all this other stuff that's in the way. I feel like it's a wasted energy so much when it comes to people, discriminating and everything. I said, okay, this is so much wasted energy. There's so many people that need help. I mean, I'm just thinking about what you went through, and there's other children that are going through that. And, and we're so busy talking about stuff that's not even irrelevant. How about the children? How about the abusiveness that's going on? How about the feminism, like the stuff that you're fighting for? That needs to be the environment, like you said. That's the kind of things we put everything in. Yeah.
I got mixed feelings. I've been lucky because I've met some very wonderful. I met some bloody awful people as well, really. But just on the thing about children, I mean, everyone. It isn't improved. It might not be happening perhaps in middle class. Well, it is happening in middle class homes. But if you think of the dark web and all that sort of stuff, if we're not abusing our own, we're taking them from. I was reading about England, lovely Britain, isn't it lovely? And it is, many beautiful things about it. But we are importing people trafficking. I could start sobbing. Bloody Romanian women. For whom? White men, I'm sorry, because it's a fact, white British lads, and probably some women as well. And that's still going on, and it's massive, and it's another form of slavery, and trying to have power over these people. I'm sorry, I know it's Christmas, and I do feel positive, But we've got to be careful that.
But it's still there. We got to talk it out. We still got to talk it out.
It is still there. I don't know if it's in human nature. I actually think it's a lack of education. I don't know, Barbara. I don't know.
Well, it's a lot of that. And then, if people have been raised in families where, like I said, it's like a continued saga. If the father, the father was raised up a certain way, then and no one's stopping it. Like you said, there's no one coming in to say this is not right or whatever. It's going to continue on. It's just like, it's just a taught thing because in their minds, it's okay, and that's the sad part about it, until somebody comes in and says, no, it's not, even though
and we tolerate a lot of stuff that's intolerable. I know that I'm sorry, I don't want to take up too much of your mind, but time. But I see this a lot actually on American sites, this thing about free speech, my right. Well, what about other people's rights not to be abused or harmed or not to be insulted or called a horrible name? This business of this right somehow, trumping, excuse the bloody pun, that man, trumping everything else is unbelievable to me. People use these rights if it favors them, don't they?
Yeah, they do. So I'm like I said, I'm loving this conversation, but I want to make sure because this is about you too.
Oh, so, right, yeah. Well, it is about me. It's a wonderful platform.
But I just want to make sure before we sign off that going back to the music part of it.
Yeah.
Now I know to the early part of the blues era and everything. What do you think because that was back in the day, but appreciating that music, that history, the stories, like I said, behind these musicians and, the love of what you love, because I love the blues too. I like all music, but, the blues, excuse me, is one of the nice ones that I like too. So what do you think now people should do to kind of appreciate it or, get themselves in that mode of saying, okay, let me see, what's going on with that? Because you have a website, you have so much information on that.
It's very difficult to even know where to start. But I think we're both friends. Well, Tracy's our publicist. I'm going to give her a little, she'll be pleased about that, Tracy Lamora. And she said, because I said, generally speaking, there's a blues for everything. You name it that's happened under the sun. And there's a blues for that because, like you said, everyone's people and they have all this stuff. Well, we've done some fabulous Christmas ones. That's a bit of a shameless plug. Go on, because if anybody wants to get a taste of some of the early blues, it's very interesting because Christmas music was all very jolly and very happy, and Santa's on the roof and la 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 la. And then African Americans came and said he might be on the bloody roof, but we haven't got any money, so. Kind of made it real. So
never thought of it like that. It's funny because now that you just said it like that, I was like, yeah, you got a point there. It depends on how you're looking at Santa, right? I mean, in what area? Yeah.
Exactly. And there's all these stories about bloody excuse my language, dysfunctional Christmases, which we know, don't we, that in some families, well, it would be in Britain, it's an excuse for a punch-up, people getting drunk. So there's a lot of similarities, but I think African Americans then told it how it was. And honestly, some of the things that are said in the music from the 20s, it's jaw-dropping. Even some of the language. I mean, I find some of it shocking, but I don't mean in a prudish way, like how disgusting. I'm not clutching my pearls, but think, wow, they were actually saying this on record. And the next one we're going to do, generally we do an artist, complete recorded works in chronological order. So that's to preserve it. That's the academic side. Some of it is difficult listening because some of the popular artists brought out 16 volumes of work, but they weren't that different. So, you're practically shooting yourself by the end of volume 16. So people like to take tracks, but one that I'm going to do, it's called Journey from the Germs. And this is the blues in a time of sickness and recovery because all been, I'm not going to I feel quite strongly about COVID. I was very, very ill with pneumonia, been ill with a lot of things.
I'm sorry.
It's very serious. It's affecting the native population and the black population. That's probably why white people are saying I don't need to wear a mask, idiots, because they haven't thought that. No, I shouldn't say that. I was a bit rude. That's obviously, but I think they should. But there's a whole body of work about people being sick and ill and sometimes dying and recovering in the blues. Very interesting.
Very interesting. Well,
it is, yeah.
Yeah, so Jill, I'm gonna have to bring you back because there's some other things that I would love to talk to you about. You know, the things that you've done and the history of the music, and then also, just dealing, like you said, the struggles and challenges that we're still dealing with today. So I do need to bring you that so we can talk about that. But for right now, I want you any last tips that you want to give the audience before we turn down.
Well, I suppose I don't really know what to say. I think in this life, it's often good luck rather than good judgment. But if you're blessed to be able to find something that you love, do that. We don't know what's in front of us. If everything is correct about climate change, it's probably a bit bleak. It might not be. I don't know. But if you can find someone with your own values, your own morality, and something that you love, you're going to be happy. You're going to be happy because obviously I also know, I don't want to say, oh, money doesn't matter. It does, doesn't it? Because I've been, had some terrible things happen to me, but I was lucky to have them in comfort because I don't know how I'd have survived. I don't know how I'd have survived some things if I hadn't got a nice bed to sleep in or I could buy some food. So we've not got to be silly about all that. Just do the best you can and be the best person that you can be. And, if you're a racist or you're a misogynist or this, that and the other, educate yourself. Awesome. That's my tip.
Awesome. Words of wisdom. Thank you. That's awesome. Yes, yes. So thank you so much, lady. And thank you for dealing with all the technology, but it was worth it because you are just a beautiful Queen Diamond and you shared with us so much wisdom and your information and your heart. You could tell you're passionate and I'm loving it. And that's what it's all about. So thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So, I want to ask you something when we finish.
So I wish you continued success in your life and your business and what you're doing with the music. Please continue that because it's so much needed. And those that are listening, thank you for joining on another special edition of the Diamond Factor Spotlight interview, dealing with queens like this wonderful lady here. You can join the Facebook community under the Diamond Factor Experience group. And if you wish to be spotlighted, please contact me, my messenger, under the Facebook group, and we can get you on a date and schedule. And remember, as I always said earlier, remember what's so important is your PPD, your purpose, passion, and drive in you, your special gifts, your special talents. No one can take that away. No one can take that away. And remember not only to build you up, but to share with others, because we all need to come together. We all have things that we can work together with and make this beautiful, beautiful world a much better place than what we can do. With that said, thank you again, Queen, and we will see you again.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. I went on too long.